Hey guys, so Shane over at Small Town Exotics had a question about our humidity. Let's talk about it. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Chris.
I'm Carly.
And this is C&C Reptiles. We are a father and daughter's team that really just enjoy keeping ball pythons and sharing it here on YouTube.
And if you are new, please consider liking, subscribing, hitting that bell, and maybe even leave a comment.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're a returning subscriber, guys, thank you so much for returning. We really appreciate your support and coming back. So guys, on the last video that we posted about heat, Shane over at Small Town Exotics, really good guy, has a great channel. If you haven't checked him out, head over there and check him out. But he had a question about our humidity and kind of how that was going in the new reptile room, which was actually the next video we were planning on doing here in the series. And so it actually worked out great that he asked that question. And so we thought we would go ahead and talk a little bit about just humidity in general and how that's changed for us over the process of us having ball pythons. And so, as most of you know, if you're returning, this is Cutie. We forgot to introduce her. She is our piebald female. She is getting really big, just over 700 grams now. So growing really nicely, and she's, man, it's been interesting as we watch her grow through handling her. She used to ball up really tight whenever we would get her out. And now she just kind of chills out whenever we get her out. So she's growing really nicely for us. So guys, let's talk about humidity. So overall, the way that we've controlled humidity, you know, you got to have a way to monitor humidity. And if you watched the last video, we won't go. Hey guys, sorry about that. Got a phone call. Apparently they didn't know we were shooting a video right now, but we were talking about how we monitor humidity. And so, you know, you saw this in the last video. So Carly's holding the one that we have in the room. Gives us the temperature and the humidity. We have electronic ones that you can see over here behind Carly that kind of monitor in the tub. Even got these, the more, I guess the cheaper versions that ZooMed makes. A couple different vendors make these. And I'll tell you guys, I'm actually probably going to go to something more like this. I like the idea of having it in the tub, and the problem with the ones with the probes, as I told you last time, I dropped it in the water dish by mistake, and now the humidity doesn't work at all. So it does still tell me temperature, but that was like a $15 hygrometer, hygrometer thermometer, and now it doesn't work for me anymore, right? These are like $6. And over time, these can potentially warp. The little cardboard inside can potentially warp, but I would figure I'd get a few years out of them before that happens, and then we would just replace them, right? So that's how we monitor, the humidity. So let's talk a little bit about where we live, because that's kind of the biggest thing in controlling humidity is the relative humidity that you have around you. Now we live in Southeast Texas, in the Houston area, and the humidity here is pretty high, right? So you can see, I mean, here in the reptile room right now, it's 62%, which is a little bit high in here. We'll talk about that in a second. But our relative humidity is in the 50s most of the time. In fact, in the house, my wife runs a dehumidifier to try to pull some of that out of the air, right? So it's just relatively high for the area that we live. We used to live up in the Panhandle. Humidity was low, right? And probably what most people, especially up north, battle is more of a low humidity. But the high humidity that we have kind of does bring some different challenges that we've seen over the times that we've kept these ball pythons. So there's a couple of different things that we look at that help us control it. So one is the substrate that we use. And second is the tub sizes, and we'll talk independently about those a little bit, okay? So let's first talk about substrate. So, you know, Carly, when we first brought Cutie and Bubbles home, you remember how we set them up?
We took the substrate and wet it, and we put it in.
And we put it in there, right? So we had the Repti chip. Well, let's back up.
We used it like their instructions.
That's right. That's right. Let's back up. When we first got them home, we used paper towels, right? And anytime that we got a new snake in, we used paper towels. Now, because of the smaller tubs and the water bowl, the paper towels seem to put the humidity about right where we needed it, okay? I guess we should say what the range is. We want to kind of keep that between 60 and 70. Maybe around 65 would be a great target. If it gets a little less than 60, it's not the end of the world. We don't want it too much over 70 for too long. Oh, and you know why? We forgot to do your fun fact. So before...
Yeah, I'm like, where am I?
So before we get into that, Carly, what's our fun fact today?
Our fun fact is, of course, about humidity.
Sure.
It is like, you have to have it so they can have their overall health.
Yep.
It is supposed to have their overall health. You need it to be their overall health. And if it's too low, they could have some problems shedding.
Yep.
So it won't come off in all one piece. It can have some stuck shed,
That's right.
and cap stuck.
And if it's too high,
They can have respiratory
you could have respiratory infections. So yeah, so that's a great fun fact, and it's very important and why we try to keep it in the range that I just mentioned. If it's too low, they're going to have problems with shedding. In fact, we will miss if we see them going into a shed cycle, we'll actually miss the container just about every day until they completely shed. And we've yet to have a problem with any type of sheds or anything. So, and then we try not to keep it again too high for too long. You certainly don't want to give respiratory infections, and that high humidity can cause different fungus and mold to grow that can ultimately get into the snake's lungs, and that's just a bad deal all the way around. So great fun fact, Carly. So let's go. So start out with paper towels. That's pretty easy for us to control the humidity. Now, like Carly said, when we moved to the coconut substrate, which we use ReptiChip, we did it just like the instructions said. We wet it down, and then basically just threw it in the tub, right? What did we find with that?
It was really high.
Really high. The humidity skyrocketed like 80–90%, right? Almost like what you would see in an incubation tub, right, for your eggs. And that was definitely not a good deal. So when we did it per the instructions, that's, just really didn't have the result we were looking for. So then what did we do?
We took it and just put it in the dry.
Well, we broke it apart. So we took the coconut substrate, didn't wet it down, threw it in the tubs dry.
But the problem was, whenever they splashed,
it went everywhere. And so that dry coconut substrate, so if you don't use coconut substrate, when you wet it, it expands. It expands a lot. And so when we didn't wet it and we just put it in dry, and they splashed around the water or we refilled it, all of a sudden this little bit of substrate we had almost filled the tub because it expanded so much, right? So that wasn't going to work. So now what do we do?
We take it, we wet it, and we just let it air dry for like a week.
That's right. So we have a tub, we go ahead and break down the block, let it expand, and then usually actually we just keep it here under the fan, and we come in and just rotate it a few times a day, put the more wet on top, and after about a week or so, it's pretty dry, it's fully expanded, and now we can throw it in there, and that really helps us control the humidity a little bit better than any of the other two, or either of the other two methods that we tried to use. So yeah, it's just it's an interesting thing that you find when I see other YouTube channels and people are literally having to wet down that humidity. It seems like every single day, just to keep it in an acceptable range. And we're kind of on the other end where we're trying to lower it somewhat to keep it in an acceptable range. So so the next thing after substrate is the tub sizes. Okay, so what do you remember about our tub sizes and humidity?
It was a little bit harder to keep the humidity to our liking in the smaller tub.
Yeah, that's right. So you guys know our rack system over here actually holds 3 different sizes of tubs. One that's actually smaller than the ones that we have, and then it's got the middle size and the larger one. So this is the size that we typically will set the new ones up in. It's a 7-quart, I believe. So what we ultimately had to do, if you can see right here, we just took a soldering iron and went down either side with a soldering iron to allow some more airflow and allow that humidity to kind of come out, right? We actually could probably go all the way down, and we've started doing that again just to help control just to help control the humidity a little bit better in these tubs, especially with the ReptiChip. The paper towel seems to do fine because it doesn't hold moisture as well. Even though when we had them on paper towels, we didn't have problems with shedding, right? But it'll dry out pretty good. But once we have the ReptiChip in here, it is a little bit more difficult. Once we go to the larger tubs, I don't know if it's just the airspace difference. We have had to put these same holes, not as many, down the front half, especially kind of around where the water dish is. So obviously that water is going to increase the humidity in the tub. But it just seems to kind of dissipate better. One of the interesting things that we found, and I'll show you a picture here in just a second. So the only one that kind of bucks that trend of the larger tub is the tub that we have cutie in. and it's nothing to, I'm sorry, not Cutie, but Bubbles, right? Oh, look, she's wrapped around Carly. She's not letting Carly go anywhere. So, but the tub that we have Bubbles in, there's more of a gap. Could just be an irregularity in the rack because every tub does the same thing. But there's just slightly more of a gap at the top than there is the other tubs in any of the other spots in that rack. And so it allows more airflow just independently. So we actually have a little piece of cardboard that we kind of shove in the front of it to lessen the airflow. So that's almost like what we see or what others may experience where humidity is not as high. So like I said, show you a picture of that. It's an interesting dynamic that we have just in one spot for just one of our snakes. So it'll be interesting to see, guys, as we move forward, how these 70 series tubs react, right? So this is even more, it's almost double the space of what we have in the bigger ones over here. Those are 23 quart tubs. Ultimately 70s are about 41 quart tubs. And so, it'll be interesting to see kind of how that goes. And obviously we'll bring you guys along for the ride with all of that. So let's see, guys, overall, that's kind of our humidity. You know, I'm kind of noticing, you know, this is day, it seems like 112,000 of quarantine, yeah. And my mullet game is pretty strong. I might have to start calling myself Chris Exotic, huh? So would that make you Carly Baskin? Maybe, I don't know. So anyways, guys, hey, really appreciate y'all coming along. If you have any other questions about humidity or anything that we've discussed, leave a comment down below. Let us know. It's been an interesting journey with that, right? And humidity seems to be that one topic that everyone's kind of, oh my gosh, you know, humidity. It's really not that scary as long as you kind of follow, the same processes and just get it under control. Like we said in the heat video a couple days ago, make sure you have all that control before you ever bring your animal home, and you're good to go. And then you just kind of roll with the punches as the environment changes around and whatnot. So, Carly, anything else? No? All right. Well, guys, again, we appreciate you coming along. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.